Imagine bringing up someone else's child and not your own. Imagine being forced to use a separate bathroom because of the colour of your skin. Imagine growing up as a 4-year-old child with a mother that neglects you and wishes you weren't hers. Well, this was the unfortunate reality for characters living and growing up in Jackson, Mississippi in the help text. So what kinds of persecution were explored in the help text? Well, the main type of persecution in this book is racial injustice, basically meaning the whites segregating and persecuting the blacks, which creates the idea of the us and the them. The blacks were considered inferior by most whites and by law, and the idea of segregation negatively impacted every aspect of the lives of the black characters. An example of this racial injustice was a policy that was introduced that required every white home to have a separate bathroom for the coloured help. You might be thinking, that's awesome, they get their own bathroom. But this was not a privilege. It's basically telling them that they were dirty and diseased and could not possibly use the same one as the superior whites because they might catch this terrible disease of being black. Abilene says in this book, Miss Leafer call me dirty, diseased. That dirty ain't a colour, disease ain't the Negro side of town. This proves the racial status quo that dominated Jackson, Mississippi during this time period. Discrimination is also a type of persecution explored in this book. Men are portrayed to be the workers of the family while the women are meant to stay at home while their African American maids cook, clean and provide for them. Skeeter was commonly faced with this problem while looking for jobs. She was often turned down just because she was female. Catherine Stockett uses toilets and bathrooms to symbolise the dirtiness of the tactics used to maintain a racist status quo in the Mississippi community in the early 1960s. And the reference to toilets and bathrooms in some ways symbolises all that is wrong with this society and the prevailing belief among most white people that black people carry diseases. Through the use of omniscient narration, we are able to see different perspectives of the characters during this novel on their ideology of persecution and segregation, not only through the eyes of African Americans, but also through the eyes of one white character who wants to create change in this society. We learn that Abilene has a heart as big as the ocean, but begins not to accept the hostility of this segregated society that she lives in after her son's death. She uses a southern dialect. An example of this is, you is kind, you is smart, you is important. We learn that Minnie Jackson is the mother of 5 children with an outspoken, quick-tempered and fiery personality. She is tough and has a sarcastic exterior, but this is only to hide her vulnerability. She uses informal diction and the use of lots of slang. This is quite similar to Abilene, showing their racial and lifestyle similarities. Skeeter is a college graduate that has the idea of writing a novel about black maids in her town. Now that her perspective on the division between white southern households and black maids have changed. This project begins her transformation from the woman she was raised to be to the woman who she wants to be. Skeeter's diction is more formal and sophisticated, representing her intelligence and her college education. There is a variety of language used in this book, as 2 of the 3 narrators are black women who tell their stories in African American English. Catherine Stockett did say, "I was scared a lot of the time that I was crossing a terrible line, writing in the voice of a black person." She continues to say, "I don't presume to think I know what it really felt like to be a black woman in Mississippi in the 1960s, but trying to understand is vital to our humanity." One character desperate for an analysis is Hilly Holbrook. She seems perfect on the outside, but on the inside, she is the most evilest persecutor in this book. She is the one responsible for setting up the Home Help in Sanitation Initiative. She is also responsible for spreading career-ending rumours about Minnie Jackson. But don't worry, Minnie gets her revenge, as she cooks Hilly a pie made out of, to put it nicely, her own waste, and Hilly eats 2 whole slices. This creates dramatic irony as the audience rubs their hands together with glee at the sight of this, which is the author's intention. An allusion takes place in this novel as well. Abilene tells Mae Mobley the story of Martin Luther King and tells her that people were mean to him because he was green. This is trying to prevent Mae Mobley from developing the same stereotype against African Americans as her mother. Abilene says, "I want to stop that moment from coming, and it comes in every white child's life when they start to think that coloured folks are not as good as whites." This quote shows that kids aren't born with racial prejudice, but it is something that can be taught from older generations, but that can be stopped. To sum up, this help book explores persecution types such as gender discrimination, but mostly racial prejudice, and the author wants the audience to feel like they need to do something to help these people who are being persecuted make change in this society. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've had some fun.